It was a quiet Saturday afternoon, and the sun streamed softly through the kitchen window, casting warm light across the counter. Emma moved with purpose, her hands lightly dusted with flour, as she mixed chocolate, cream, and sugar in a small glass bowl. Baking had always been her sanctuary, a place where she could lose herself in textures, smells, and the small, careful motions that transformed raw ingredients into something comforting. Today, she had decided to try a chocolate tart recipe she had seen in a magazine the night before. It promised to be rich, smooth, and decadent. And Emma felt a little thrill at attempting something new. David, her stepson, had just returned from soccer practice. 15 years old, tall for his age, with a mop of dark hair and a bright, curious gaze. He stood at the doorway, wiping sweat from his forehead with the sleeve of his shirt. His uniform still had the faint smell of grass and sports, and his shoes were scuffed from the morning game. He paused to watch her work, leaning against the doorframe with interest. "Smells amazing." "Emma," he said, his voice a mixture of awe and amusement. He rarely complimented her cooking directly, so the words made her smile. Emma laughed softly, turning slightly to glance at him. "Thanks, David. I'm trying a new chocolate tart recipe. Want to see what it's like before it's done?" David raised his eyebrows, intrigued. "Before it's done? Isn't it too hot? Or messy?" She grinned, feeling a sudden playful impulse. "Maybe, but if you're brave, I'll let you taste it." She picked up a small spoon, holding it out toward him. David hesitated. He wasn't expecting the offer. It was an unusual gesture, simple yet personal, and it made him pause. Really? You mean now?" Emma nodded, smiling warmly. There was something comforting in her tone, something that encouraged without pressure. "Just a tiny taste. You can tell me if you like it." He looked down at the spoon, then back at her. The kitchen smelled like chocolate and butter, sweet and inviting. Something about the moment felt different, almost like a small secret between them. Finally, he nodded. "Okay, I guess I can try a little." He took the spoon from her hand, hesitating for just a moment. Emma's smile reassured him, softening the moment with a quiet kindness. He scooped a small taste and put it in his mouth. His eyes widened. "Wow, that's really good," he exclaimed, surprised by how rich and smooth the chocolate tasted. He wasn't usually expressive about food, but this was something exceptional. Emma chuckled. "I'm glad you like it. I wasn't sure if it would turn out right. Sometimes these recipes are tricky." David leaned against the counter, continuing to watch her as she worked. "How do you make it so smooth?" he asked, genuinely curious. Emma explained the steps slowly, pointing out small tricks: how to melt the chocolate evenly, how to fold the cream without letting it collapse. He listened intently, nodding along, asking questions here and there. They moved around the kitchen together, passing ingredients back and forth, sharing a quiet sense of camaraderie. There was an ease to their interaction. For Emma, it was comforting to see David so attentive. For David, it was rare to have moments where he could be both curious and relaxed without anyone rushing him. The kitchen, usually a place of routine and chores, felt transformed into a space of connection, where laughter and conversation flowed freely. As the chocolate tart mixture cooled, Emma set it carefully into a small pan. David continued to linger, sneaking small tastes from the spoon, each one accompanied by a soft murmur of approval. "It's really good. Emma, you're amazing at this." Emma's heart lifted. Baking had always been a private joy, but sharing it like this, seeing someone enjoy her efforts, felt deeply satisfying. "Thanks, David. That means a lot," she said. She paused, looking at him thoughtfully. "You know, these small things like baking aren't just about food. They're about taking time for each other." David nodded slowly, as if he understood, though he didn't fully grasp the deeper meaning. "Yeah, it's nice. I mean, usually I just rush home, do homework, practice soccer. Never really notice small stuff like this." Emma smiled, placing a hand briefly on his shoulder in a gentle, reassuring gesture. "It's okay. Life can get busy and we forget the little things that matter. That's why moments like these are special." David's expression softened. He glanced at the tart, then back at her, a quiet smile spreading across his face. "I'll remember this," he said sincerely. Emma felt a flicker of warmth at his words. She realized this wasn't just about the chocolate tart. It was about trust, connection, and sharing a part of herself in a way that was personal yet innocent. Moments like this were rare, and she cherished them quietly, knowing that simple gestures often carried more meaning than grand acts. As David moved to wash his hands, Emma took a step back and breathed in the rich, sweet aroma lingering in the kitchen. It was more than chocolate. It was the smell of warmth, laughter, and connection. She realized that this afternoon, seemingly ordinary, had turned into something memorable. A memory that would linger in both their minds longer than the tart, would linger in their stomachs. She wiped her hands on a towel and looked out the window. The sunlight had shifted, creating long shadows across the counter. For a moment, she let herself imagine the days ahead, weeks filled with laughter. Small discoveries and quiet bonds forming in unexpected ways. The tart, once set, would eventually be shared with the rest of the family. But this first taste had already created a private story between her and David. It wasn't dramatic or extraordinary in the usual sense, but it carried a subtle yet a gentle reminder that family connections could deepen in the simplest of ways. Emma smiled to herself, thinking how surprising life could be. A small spoonful of chocolate had led to a quiet afternoon of laughter, conversation, and understanding. She felt a surge of gratitude for these fleeting, unremarkable, yet unforgettable moments. Even as she cleaned up, she'd have heard David humming softly in the background, a tune from his practice earlier. The sound mixed with the lingering chocolate aroma, and for a fleeting moment, the kitchen felt like a haven from the outside world. Emma realized that part of her happiness came from seeing David grow into a thoughtful, curious young man. Sharing small experiences, like baking together, allowed her to witness more than just his habits or routines. It let her glimpse the heart of who he was becoming by the time the tart was ready for the refrigerator. Cooled and set, Emma and David had exchanged stories, laughter, and small insights into their lives. It had been a simple act offering a taste, but it had opened a door to connection, trust, and quiet appreciation. As the day moved on, Emma reflected on how easily meaningful moments could sneak up on you. She had gone into the kitchen expecting nothing more than to try a new recipe. But what she found was far richer. A shared moment of joy, a connection with her stepson, and a memory that neither of them would forget anytime soon. The afternoon ended softly, with David moving back to the living room and Emma tidying the kitchen. Yet the warmth lingered, as did the quiet understanding that sometimes the smallest gestures could spark the deepest bonds. And Emma knew, even as she wiped the last spoon clean, that this was only the beginning of many such moments to come. For Emma, the chocolate tart wasn't just dessert, it was a symbol of connection, care, and the gentle surprises life offered when you opened yourself to small acts of sharing. And for David, the taste of something new had become a memory colored with laughter, curiosity, and the simple joy of being seen. The next day, the air in the house felt different, warmer, softer, filled with quiet anticipation. Emma had spent the morning tidying up, putting groceries away, and planning dinner. The chocolate tart from yesterday was still in the refrigerator, its rich aroma lingering faintly even after hours. She moved through the kitchen with her usual rhythm, chopping vegetables for a light salad. Humming softly to herself, David appeared once again, leaning against the doorway, a casual curiosity in his eyes. "Hey, Emma, can I help with lunch?" he asked. He carried a relaxed energy, the kind that made the house feel lively, without it being noisy or chaotic. Emma glanced at him, a small smile forming. "Sure, David, I could use an extra hand." She handed him a bowl of washed lettuce and a small container of cherry tomatoes. "You can mix these together and I'll get the dressing ready." He accepted the task eagerly, his hands moving carefully, almost thoughtfully. There was a rhythm to his actions, a quiet attentiveness that surprised her. Emma watched him from across the counter, noticing how much he had grown in the past few months, taller, more confident. yet still retaining that boyish curiosity that made moments like yesterday so special as they worked side by side. Emma felt a sense of calm wash over her. These small domestic routines, often overlooked, were quietly forming a bond between them. They spoke little at first, letting their movements do the talking, passing utensils, setting plates, arranging food with a shared understanding. But after a few minutes, David spoke up. "Emma, about yesterday." He began hesitantly. "I really liked that tart. It wasn't just good, it was different. Like you really put thought into it." Emma paused, touched by his sincerity. "Thank you, David. That means a lot. Baking can be tricky sometimes, but seeing you enjoy it makes it worth it." He smiled shyly. "Yeah, it's nice. I don't usually get to just be here and, I don't know, share something like that." Emma nodded, understanding more than he could express in words. "Sometimes the quiet moments are the ones that matter most," she said gently. "They can tell us more about each other than words ever could." David looked down at the salad he was mixing, his hands moving slowly, thoughtfully. "I think I get it," he murmured. Then he glanced up, meeting her eyes. "Thanks for letting me be part of it." The words hung in the air, soft but significant. Emma realized that these small gestures, sharing a recipe, allowing him to taste something, letting him participate, were building trust in ways neither of them had anticipated. After lunch, they cleared the dishes together, moving in a quiet, synchronized rhythm. David washed the plates while Emma dried them, occasionally laughing at his playful mistakes, a splash of water there. The kitchen was filled with light chatter, laughter, and the soothing comfort of shared effort. Once the dishes were done, Emma suggested they take a break in the living room. David flopped onto the couch with a sigh of contentment, while Emma settled into the armchair opposite him. The sunlight streamed through the large windows, casting long golden streaks across the carpet. For a while, they simply sat, enjoying the quiet. Then David spoke again, his voice hesitant but tinged with curiosity. "Emma, can I ask you something?" She raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Of course, David. Anything." He hesitated, twisting his hands in his lap. "Well, yesterday when I tasted the tart, it felt different. I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't just the taste, it was you." Emma blinked, taken aback for a moment. She wasn't expecting such honesty, such unfiltered emotion from a 15-year-old. There was something raw in his words, simple recognition of connection that transcended the ordinary act of sharing food. "I think I understand," she said carefully. "Sometimes the things we make or the time we share carries a part of ourselves. It's like leaving a piece of who we are in something we do." David nodded slowly, absorbing her words. "Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like, I don't know, I feel closer to you. Not just because of the tart, but because you let me be here. You notice things?" Emma felt a gentle warmth in her chest. This wasn't about the tart or the kitchen, it was about trust, about the quiet ways people can connect and leave a mark on each other's lives. She realized that this conversation, so simple and sincere, was shaping a bond that would remain long after the kitchen was cleaned and the tart eaten. David shifted slightly, leaning forward. "Emma, can I tell you something else?" "Of course," she said, her voice soft, encouraging. He looked at her, eyes wide and earnest. I like spending time with you. Not like family stuff, like normal, but it's nice. I feel safe, I guess." Emma's heart swelled with emotion. It wasn't an inappropriate sentiment, it was a deep, sincere acknowledgement of the trust and comfort they shared. She smiled gently. "I'm glad, David. It's important to have people in your life who make you feel safe and cared for." He relaxed slightly, a small smile forming. "Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, sometimes I don't feel like anyone notices the little things. But you do." Emma reached out, placing her hand lightly on his shoulder, a gesture of warmth and reassurance. "I notice, David, and I always will. That's what family and trust is about. Not just the big moments, but the small ones, too." They sat in silence for a few moments, each reflecting on the quiet intensity of the connection forming between them. The room was filled with sunlight, warmth, and the faint aroma of chocolate lingering from the tart. Outside, the world went on, but inside the living room, time seemed to slow, allowing them to simply exist in a shared space of understanding. Eventually, David stood up, stretching. "I should probably finish my homework," he said, but there was a softness in his tone. A reluctance to leave the comfort of the moment. Emma nodded. "I understand. But remember, moments like this don't need to be rare. We can always take time for small connections, even in busy days." He smiled, heading toward his room, a lightness in his step. "Yeah, I'll try. Thanks, Emma, for everything." As he left, Emma remained in the armchair, reflecting on the conversation. It had been brief, but it carried with a reminder that connection wasn't always about grand gestures. Sometimes it was about listening, noticing, and sharing small pieces of ourselves in ways that mattered. Later that afternoon, Emma returned to the kitchen. The tart was gone, eaten by her husband and the family during lunch, but the memory of sharing it with David lingered. She cleaned the counter slowly, thinking about the subtle ways life presented opportunities for trust, understanding, and emotional connection. She thought about the moments they had shared baking, talking, laughing, and realized that what mattered most wasn't the dessert or the kitchen, but the bond they were quietly building. David's honesty, his willingness to share his feelings, and his curiosity had created a space where trust could grow naturally. As evening approached, Emma prepared dinner with a renewed sense of warmth. The kitchen was alive with light chatter and movement as the family gathered, but in her mind, she replayed the afternoon quietly, each laugh, each word, each shared glance with David. She understood that these ordinary moments were often the ones that left the deepest impressions. When David returned from finishing homework, he lingered in the kitchen, peeking around the corner. "Emma, can we bake something again tomorrow?" She smiled, feeling a soft joy. "Of course, David. We can try a new recipe. Maybe something even sweeter this time." His eyes lit up with excitement, and Emma realized that these small acts of sharing, connection, were forming memories that would stay with both of them. It wasn't about the food, it was about trust, care, and the quiet thrill of being understood and noticed. As the sun set, casting a golden glow through the kitchen, Emma cleaned up the last of the dishes. She felt a gentle satisfaction, a quiet pride in the bond she and David were nurturing. The chocolate tart had been the catalyst, but the real magic was in the conversation, the attention, and the simple act of sharing herself that night. As Emma prepared for bed, she reflected on the afternoon's moments. She understood that the simplest gestures often carried the most profound impact. Trust, connection, and mutual understanding didn't always announce themselves. They were formed quietly, through shared experiences, sincerity, and attentiveness. And Emma knew that tomorrow would bring more opportunities, more laughter, more shared moments, and more ways to strengthen the bond that had begun so unexpectedly with a single chocolate tart and a small, meaningful gesture. The day ended softly, leaving behind the lingering aroma of chocolate, the warmth of sunlight, and the quiet joy of connection. For Emma and David, the ordinary had become extraordinary, and the bond they were building would remain a subtle, powerful thread in the fabric of their lives. The following evening, the house felt calm yet full of quiet anticipation. Emma had spent most of the afternoon tidying up, preparing dinner, and placing the leftover ingredients from their earlier baking session neatly in the pantry. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden hue through the living room windows. The peaceful rhythm of the house was comforting, soft backdrop to the moments she hoped would become memories. David appeared once again, as if drawn by the quiet energy of the house. He leaned casually against the doorway, a mixture of curiosity and nervousness in his expression. "Hey, Emma, are you busy?" he asked. Emma looked up from the cutting board, smiling gently. "Not too busy. Do you want to help with dinner again?" He nodded, walking over. There was an eagerness in his steps that Emma noticed, a subtle excitement that made her heart feel lighter. They moved into the kitchen together, settling into a comfortable rhythm. David washed the vegetables while Emma prepared the chicken. occasionally exchanging small words and quiet laughter. As they worked, David suddenly paused, holding a tomato in his hand. He looked at Emma with wide, honest eyes. "Emma, can I ask you something? Something kind of important." Emma stopped for a moment, setting down her knife. She studied him carefully, sensing the weight behind his words. "Of course, David, you can ask me anything." He hesitated, taking a deep breath. "Yesterday and the day before. When we spent time together, it felt different. Like I could tell you something without worrying. I don't know how to explain it, but I trust you." Emma felt a warm glow spread through her chest. These were not words a young teenager would share lightly. They carried sincerity, trust, and a depth of feeling that made the ordinary afternoon extraordinary. She placed her hand lightly on his shoulder. "David, I'm honored that you feel that way. Trust is a precious thing, and I'll always do my best to respect it." He smiled shyly, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "I don't usually tell people things about myself, but with you, it's easier." Emma nodded, understanding that this wasn't about sharing secrets. It was about connection. Sometimes the people we allow into our quiet moments become the ones we rely on. It's not about big gestures, but about noticing, listening, and being present. David seemed to take her words to heart. He placed the tomato back in the bowl and washed his hands. "I get it. I think it's like when we baked that tart, it wasn't just dessert. It was something else. A way to connect without even saying much." Emma smiled, appreciating the insight. "Exactly, David. Sometimes the simplest actions carry the most meaning." Once dinner was ready, they set the table together, their movements synchronized and easy. David arranged the plates, glasses, and utensils with care, showing a pride in his contribution that was touching. Emma prepared a small salad and set it alongside the roasted chicken, taking a moment to look at him. "David, thank you for helping today," she said. "You make the house feel lighter, happier, just by being here." He shrugged modestly, but his eyes shone. "I like being here. It feels safe and nice." Dinner passed in a quiet, pleasant rhythm. They talked about school, hobbies, and future plans, their conversation flowing naturally. There was no rush, no tension, just shared moments of comfort and understanding. Emma noticed how attentive David was, how he listened as much as he spoke, showing a maturity that balanced his youthful energy. After the dishes were cleared, Emma suggested they sit in the living room for a bit. David flopped onto the couch with a sigh, the contentment in his posture unmistakable. Emma joined him in the armchair, glancing at the fading sunlight that bathed the room in gold, for several minutes. They sat quietly, letting the comfort of the moment sink in. Then David spoke, his voice gentle but filled with curiosity. "Emma, can I tell you something I've been thinking about?" "Of course," she replied softly, leaning forward to give him her full attention. He took a deep breath. "It's about yesterday and today. Spending time with you. It's different than with anyone else. I feel like I can be myself. And I want to keep doing that. Spending time together. Baking. Talking. It matters to me." Emma's chest tightened with emotion. It wasn't an inappropriate statement. It was a heartfelt acknowledgement of trust and connection. "David, I feel the same way. These moments matter to me too. It's not about the tasks or the recipes. It's about sharing time, thoughts, and trust." He looked relieved, a small smile spreading across his face. "I was afraid you'd think it was silly or too much." Emma shook her head, her smile warm. "Not at all. What you're feeling is honest, and that's what makes it important." They sat in companionable silence for a while, the quiet punctuated only by the soft ticking of a clock and the distant sounds of the neighborhood settling in for the evening. Emma realized that these ordinary moments, baking, sharing, talking, were quietly shaping a bond that would last far beyond any single day. As darkness settled outside, David stood and stretched. "I should probably get to my room," he said, though he moved slowly. Reluctant to leave the comfort of the living room, Emma nodded. "I understand. But remember, We don't need special occasions to share moments like this. They can happen any day, any time. David smiled, his eyes reflecting gratitude and trust. I'll remember. Thanks, Emma, for everything. When he left, Emma remained in the armchair, reflecting on the day. She understood that what they shared wasn't about grand gestures, it was about noticing the small things, creating a safe space, and valuing each other's presence. The chocolate tart had been the beginning, but the real connection had grown through conversation, laughter, and quiet attentiveness later. As Emma prepared for bed, she thought about the way David had expressed himself, his trust and his sincerity. These moments weren't fleeting, they were laying the foundation for a meaningful, emotional bond. She realized that connection and trust could be nurtured through patience, understanding, and the courage to share oneself openly. The night ended with a calmness that was both satisfying and profound. Emma knew that tomorrow would bring more opportunities, more laughter, shared moments, and quiet, meaningful experiences. She smiled softly, realizing that ordinary days, when filled with genuine attention and care, could leave extraordinary marks on the heart. The house grew silent, the lingering warmth of the evening wrapping around her like a gentle hug. Emma turned off the lights and lay in bed, thinking of David's words, his trust, and the quiet way their bond had strengthened. She understood that moments of connection, no matter how small, could change lives. As sleep began to take her, Emma felt a sense of peace. The bond she and David were nurturing was real, safe, and meaningful. It wasn't about grand declarations or dramatic events. It was about presence, understanding, and the quiet power of trust and care. And as the night deepened, Emma knew one thing with certainty: these moments, simple and sincere, would remain in both their hearts forever. The trust, the shared laughter, the quiet attentiveness, they were the true treasures of life, more valuable than anything else. For Emma and David, the ordinary had become extraordinary, and the chocolate tart, once a simple dessert, had been the gentle spark that ignited a lasting, heartfelt connection, one built on trust, understanding, and the quiet beauty of being seen and appreciated.